Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the start and sit edition of the Nickel Press. This is our first show. My name is Doug Moore. I am part of the Nickel Press Show. You can find me on Twitter at DMooreNFL. I'm joined tonight by one of my fellow writers at Razzball and also at Nickel Press, and an up-and-coming newcomer. So first, Tahal Bedek is here with us tonight. He is from the Nickel Press. Tahal, why don't you say hello to everybody at home?
Greetings, it's Tahal Bedek, Razzball's finest, or one of the many, Nickel Press. Enjoying my time with Doug. He's a legend in the making. I'm enjoying doing everything that he's a part of. Glad to be a part of it. Glad to have Mario on here as one of my Twitter friends, buddies. Excited to have him on here, welcoming into the group of fellow fantasy nerds he belongs.
Well, I see that my money went well spent when it comes to, kissing up to me. We are also joined here by Mario. Is it Rotundi? I'm sorry if I
Rotundi, yep, you got it right. Yep,
Rotundi. He's an up-and-comer. He happens to know one of our fellow Nickel Press members, Andy Singleton. He actually knows him in quote-unquote real life. They're both firefighters. Mario, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to everybody?
Yeah. From Brooklyn, New York. Like you said, firefighter with Andy for 13 years now, and big-time Met and Patriot fan. So been following fantasy sports now for like 13 years. Love playing. Just enjoy the research and all that stuff. And it's just a pleasure to be on with you two guys. I look up to you guys and read all your stuff and watch all your videos, so this is really cool.
Well, we're glad to have you, and hopefully we can get you into the fantasy world and never let you out again. So this show is basically, so this show is going to be sort of recapping the previous week, and not only NFL, but obviously fantasy football as well. So we're talking about things, and then we're going to go into, position players that we like this week, that we want to start, maybe those fringe players that maybe you're not sure about, and then also some position players that, the matchup or whatever it is, you want to sit them this week. And we'll be telling you guys why and all that. But first I want to sort of go over the past NFL week. So it was week one, finally back to football. I think the first thing to start off with, biggest fantasy football news, and it's not good. It's, Dez Bryant, on Sunday night, suffered a broken bone in his right foot. He did already undergo surgery. Unfortunately, nobody knows when he's going to be back. This timeline keeps changing, whether it's 4 to 6 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, who knows. Our own Dr. Celine Perec, who also is with the Nickel Press, had said that it's going to be at least 6 weeks, but it seems like the timeline keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. So obviously this isn't good news for the Cowboys, for Dez Bryant, and especially those who drafted Dez Bryant in the first round. So now you're going to see a combination of Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley, and maybe even Jason Witten as well. So to try to make up for the loss that Dez Bryant is leaving behind, which is huge. So I just wanted to get your guys' take, on sort of the whole fantasy perspective now. How does it affect the run game, the pass game? Whose stock is up? Whose stock is down? Tahal, we'll start with you first. Just sort of give me your opinion on what's going on in Dallas now. What's going to happen now that Dez Bryant is out for however long?
Yeah, first of all, a guy who's had the same injury, Julio Jones, knows it very well, and he said he'd be surprised, if he plays at all, until week 10, 11, or even comes back at all this season. Julio's had the screw in the foot. It's been there before. We've seen how it's kind of hampered him in the past. He knows as good as anybody. I think this is a little more serious than Desi's making it out to be. He's saying, I'll be back in, 2-4 weeks or whatever. It just might not be feasible. And the Cowboys just paid this guy all this money. Do they really want to push him back or allow him to come back early and re-injure it and have it be something that goes on? I don't know. I wouldn't personally do that. I think Terrence Williams, first and foremost, the guy I like anyway already, but now can he handle the number one duties? I think he'll do an okay job, and he's definitely going to get an uptake in targets, which I'm kind of interested to see. He kind of let me down a little bit week one. I thought he had a couple balls he could have caught that didn't. He almost had a TD that I was calling for. I think Beasley also gets a ton of targets if they want to start using him like an Edelman if they want to, and then Witten's targets also go up, especially in the red zone where him and Dez would share the red zone targets. Now Witten should probably get even more down there since he's the big dog. And so, those three guys, and then, again, there should maybe be a little uptick in the run game. We'll see if Randall can kind of handle it or if Christina Michael mans up and starts working his way into the backfield a little bit. I'm not sure if that happens right away or if we have to wait till Randall kind of falls a little bit, but I'm really intrigued if Michael can get a hold of that job eventually because I think he's the most talented of their running backs that they have there.
Yeah, no, I think that they acquired him for a reason, and hopefully that they'll start using him. But one guy I don't think was mentioned that sort of, even before Dez went down, that was doing pretty well in Sunday night's game was Lance Dunbar. He was being used in that passing down back. He was getting a lot of receptions out of the backfield. And I'm curious, Mario, I'm going to go to you here.
Yep.
Do you think with Dez being down that we could see the type of reduction that we saw from Lance Dunbar keep going every week? Is he somebody that you want to target, especially in PPR leagues? Do you think he'll keep up the pace he had in week one?
I'm not too crazy about him. I thought about him while you guys were talking about some names over there. I think the guy that, just to piggyback on T-Hole, is Cole Beasley. I can see his targets going up a lot playing the Wes Welker / Julian Edelman role in Dallas. But I'm not too crazy about Dunbar. I think he might be someone you want to watch and see what he does. I think week to week he can have value, but I don't think it's going to be consistent. And another thing, Kevin Durant had that injury last year too, so I doubt he's going to be back in that 4 to 6 week range, Des Bryant. So I definitely see him coming back no earlier than week 8. So, but yeah, I mean, just Dunbar is not a guy I'm too crazy about. I don't know how you feel about him, T-Hole, but I don't see anything too special about him.
PPR only for that guy is he relevant to me at all at this point? I mean, I'm not aware if he got a carry at all in that last game. I don't believe he did.
Right.
But if he did, it was 1 or 2. So if it's PPR and like your desperate play or something like that, he might.
Yeah, I would
agree.
I'd have to be like a desperation play. Yeah, absolutely.
So one more thing, I guess one of the biggest people affected by this, one of the biggest players affected by this, Tony Romo loses his number one guy. He was sort of, a lot of people pegged him as, a quarterback, a low-end quarterback one that people can feel comfortable about starting every week. And he still did well after Dez went down. He led that game-winning drive against New York. But again, that's New York, so they're not known for their defense. So, Tahal, do you still think that even with Dez Bryant being out, that Tony Romo is someone that you should feel comfortable starting every week? Is he still a quarterback one to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, is the quarterback one? I mean, is it a top 10 quarterback? Top 12? You can usually get him pretty late, and I still think he's still can be a really good option, especially in that offense where, I don't trust the running game yet. I don't think Randall's the real deal like that, McFadden's, whatever. And again, if Michael's not going to get in there, they don't really have a guy who I feel comfortable with pounding the rock. And even if he does get in there, he's kind of a fumbler. They don't have DeMarco Murray anymore. I thought this year was a great year for Romo because I thought they would lean on the passing game a lot more. Obviously, with Dez out, as you said, it becomes a little more difficult. But I think it's still doable with targeting Beasley a lot more because, he looks pretty electric when he gets the ball, and Terrence Williams should be able to do enough. And then don't forget second-string tight end. I'm totally blank on his name. I was just talking about him. Escobar. Yeah, Escobar. He's a real nice weapon out there as well, so he'll probably get a little uptick in targets. I think they'll be able to do it. You don't want to play him against – you probably don't want to start Romo against a top-tier defense. You might have better options. But, against the Phillies, the Giants, not the Phillies, but the Eagles, the Giants, teams like this that give up the yardage, I don't think it'll be a problem. at all.
Gotcha. So we spent a lot of time talking about the Cowboys. I guess we got to move away from them. I know a buddy of mine, when I did this last season, would hate when I talked about the Cowboys.
It's America's team. That's what happens.
Yeah, that's what happens. So I guess the next thing for me, and I don't know about you guys, but obviously over the weekend, somebody that a lot of people were high on going into the season that weren't sure if he was going to produce or not. Amir Abdullah had an astounding week, considering. And I guess, obviously, the biggest reason that I would bring him up is he's still going to be able to get the amount of touches and be able to put up the type of production that he is, which I would think is a running back 2 level. Mario, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Do you think Amir is going to be able to keep up that, is he going to be able to get the same amount of touches? And is he someone worth starting every week, especially in PPR?
Oh, I think he's a PPR stud. If you just watch what he did in the preseason and the game 1, that guy is explosive. He's a guy, I wish I got him more teams. I think I keep hearing that, we're going to keep his touches limited, blah, blah, blah. There's no way. Every time he touches the ball, he could take it to the house. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy. So I can't see how they just don't keep feeding him the ball, especially this week. I love him this week.
Awesome. Yeah, I think he's ranked in the top 5, I think, in Yahoo and other websites, especially in PPR. So I can't see why. I think the coach came out and said that he was going to get the same amount of touches, which, given what he did,
crazy.
Sahal, any concern about Calvin Johnson not doing that well in week 1?
Yeah, there is a concern for me. I have him ranked pretty high this week, and it's almost just because I want to think he's still the man. Like, it's almost like a gut call. Like, he's got to go off this week. Like, what if he doesn't? Like, is this guy even anything like a top 5 receiver anymore? Like, I don't know if his body. I've read reports on, doctors and other people thinking like, he's so big and he's so this and that. His body might physically not be able to keep doing the things that he's been able to do because he's such a freak at that size. You just never see it. So I am concerned, but he didn't play in the preseason. He should be fresh and ready to go. San Diego, I like their cornerbacks, but there should be no man on earth to be able to cover Calvin Johnson one-on-one or even sometimes even 2-on-1 he's been able to beat in the past. So, the Vikings, DBs, they're decent. We got the vet, Newman, and then Rhodes is a really good up-and-comer, so I like him. But, if he doesn't get off this week, he's in the dome. I'm going to be pretty down on him, but I think Stafford's going to make an effort to get him more involved. So I'm thinking he has a nice week. I am concerned, though, to answer your question.
I would be too, especially given Stafford has not really lived up to the hype, especially considering who he has as weapons. He's consistently had weapons. He had Golden Tate last year. He had Calvin Johnson before. He's had him for years. Amir Abdullah. He had Reggie Bush in the past. Drake Bell. Now he's got Eric Ebron, who's the guy I want to talk about a little bit next, Mario. He was drafted 10th overall last year. That's pretty high for a tight end.
No.
But a lot of people saw him sort of take a backseat to Brandon Pettigrew and Joseph Ferrier. And then we saw him sort of have a really good performance this past weekend. And a lot of people were saying that, coming into a sophomore season, he could be a top 10 tight end. Do you see that? Do you see him being a tight end in the top 10 that, he's going to finally live up to his potential?
Yeah, he's another guy I'm not too crazy about. I think he has all the potential to be that, but, it's one game. He hasn't shown it. Last year he was non-existent. I'm just not too crazy about him. I don't know if it's his attitude or what it may be, but if he does it consistently, like if he starts doing it the next 2 or 3 weeks, okay, then I'll believe it, but I really don't think he has it. I'm not too impressed with him. He has the size, he's got all the talent, but he doesn't seem like a guy that has it up in his head, so I'm not too crazy about him.
Yeah, and considering what we saw this past weekend, 22 touchdowns scored by tight ends. It was, especially for such a shallow position, we saw so much output. We saw, Kelsey have 2 touchdowns. We saw Gronk have 3. We saw Eifert have 1. We saw Austin Severian Jenkins get 2. And then we had Eric Ebron, we had Jason Witten got 2. It's just a huge weekend, especially for literally, I would think, the most shallow position, especially in fantasy football, where, you have maybe the top 5 and that's a huge drop-off. Anybody can, be that next person. So I guess another thing I want to talk about, another player that's going to be coming back from suspension, is LeGarrette Blount, and I know Tahal is going to be pissed because I'm talking about the Patriots, of course. But Mario's on my side because he likes the Patriots.
That's right.
So he's coming off suspension.
Hold up. Is the Patriots? And you're obviously a New Yorker. Like, wait, can you give us a long story,
T-Hole. We can't get into that right now.
We need more time.
The ridiculous story. Like, it better be something like my grandpa, like on his deathbed, told me, like I have to be. I mean, it better be something. Just
I wish it was that good,
heart-wrenching that I can forgive it. 'Cause
It's a little bit strange, I have to admit, but maybe that's a story for another time when we have more time on our hands.
Cool. Okay, we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
Because I need to know.
What I wanted to get into is LeGarrette Blount. He's going to be coming off a suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with the release of Jonas Gray, you would think that helps LeGarrette Blount's stock, his fantasy stock. But then we saw Dion Lewis, who I also want to talk about real quick. Dion Lewis had sort of a breakout performance. He didn't play at all last year. Comes to New England. Nobody knew who was going to be that passing down back of those James White, Travaris Cadet, Brandon Bolden, or Dion Lewis. And it looks like Lewis is locked it up. But like I said, LeGarrette Blount's back. Do we see him getting the majority of the carries? Do we see him putting up, running back 2 numbers, top 25 numbers? I'll start with Mario first, sort of to soften the blow before Tahal starts ripping him. So, Mario, what do you think about LeGarrette Blount? Do you think he's someone who can achieve running back 2 stats, especially with Jonas Gray not being there anymore?
I don't think he'll do it consistently. He'll have his games. It's all game plan with the Patriots. If you've been watching them over the years, you'll see. They brought in Welker. They made him into a superstar. Woodhead, same thing. They just go according to who they play. And, if it's a team they can run on, then Blunt's going to be the man. If it's a team they want to throw on, then, they'll just come up with a different game plan. So he'll have his good weeks, but I would not want to count on him consistently as a running back, too.
Gotcha. And I guess I have to do this. Tahal, what is your opinion about LeGarrette Blount? I'm hiding behind my couch right now.
Yeah, I mean, other than the fact the guy's just a known, is there language restrictions on this podcast?
I'll let it flip.
Well, anyway, I mean, the guy is just a known piece of trash, man. I mean, the guy is a loser. I mean, the guy is punching people in college. I didn't really have a problem with that. I was like, oh, that's kind of gangster. That's kind of cool. But then he's just a loser. Like, I mean, he's in the pros. If you notice, the guy's been making, like, the NFL minimum, like, his whole career, dude. Like, he reminds me of the kind of guy who's probably driving a Bentley when he's making $400 a year and bought a $200,000 car. This guy's going to be broke when he gets into the league. Get ready to see him on, Where Are They Now, like, 5 years from now. He's going to be living, like, on the street or something, like, probably shooting somebody. I don't know. I just don't like, I mean, and then every time I think he's done, he'll have a game like he did in the playoffs where it's like he's cutting, he's dodging people. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I thought those skills were kind of gone. He seems like a plotter. But again, I drafted him in my big money league because he was just there. People just kept letting him slide. I'm like, I got to pick this guy. But this week against my Buffalo Bills and that ferocious defense, I wouldn't dare start LeGarrette Blount. Maybe next week once he gets a little work in, and then, when they play those softies, Belichick likes to get him grinding. He'll obviously be the goal line guy all the time. So, he's a decent player, running back 2 or 3, I suppose. I mean, 2 if you're desperate, 3. He's a real good 3.
Should I dare ask you about another New England Patriots running back that I brought up earlier? I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah. Dion?
Yeah.
The guy that's been on like 5 different teams. Another guy's on the street last year. somehow is like leading the team like to victory last week. I mean, I'm just confused, man. The Patriot way, it's kind of like I don't understand how it keeps working. Like with a guy, like he looked like he's a skilled player. Like, don't get me wrong, decent like catching the ball, but there should be a bunch of guys. I'm surprised he beat out that Travis Cadet guy who went there. People thought he was going to be the guy to kind of replace the Vereen role, but this guy looked fine in doing that. But in PPR, it's obviously a lot more valuable. But when Blunt's back, you know, I think as far as getting carries, I think just kind of like Vereen, that'll kind of disappear. Then again, the rest of the backup Patriots, like, I mean, Bolden, that guy looks so bad. Every time I'm just wondering why that guy's in the NFL. Literally every time I see him get a carry, I'm like, there's nobody more deserving than this guy of an NFL job. Like, why is this guy in the league? So
I think he's a special teamer.
Right. But so Lewis, you know, has some value in PPR, obviously, because he's got, just like Vereen did. I don't think he's as good as Vereen, but he looks like he can handle the job just fine. So he's an interesting guy. But
yeah, I would just be cautious of week to week. I don't see that happening every week. I'm telling you, the way they do things, it's game plan. If you're going to count on him in the PPR and you flex, I think you're wasting your time. I really do. I don't see consistency out of him. I like him. He looked good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be consistent.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest knock when it comes to the Patriots running backs is that they're all fantasy relevant. It's just one week they could, you know, rack up 20 points, and the next week they get 3 carries, and you know what the heck's going on? And then Brandon Bolden gets 20 carries and somehow gets 100 yards, and then Tahal throws things, and I don't know, he gets mad. Yeah, so I don't know. I drafted him in a couple of leagues, you know, thinking, you know, because he was slipping to the 30s when it comes to running backs being picked. I said, why not? You know, because, you know, he did pretty well, especially in the playoffs. Jonas Gray is gone, obviously, so there's not another big back like him, another, you know, power back. But who knows? Maybe it would change, especially with LaFell being out. Who knows? But Gronk seems unstoppable. Sorry to Hall, but I don't think the Bills are going to be able to stop him.
They're not going to stop him.
No,
it's not going to happen.
I'm glad you agree. I'm biased. So I guess the meaning of the show is you know, the start and sit edition for this week. Week 2. Can't believe it's already week 2. I just remembered yesterday when, you know, the Patriots. Oh, that's right, the Patriots won the Super Bowl. But the start sit. I'll set the tone.
I was
first,
there.
I
remember.
So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start it up. I'm gonna set the tone. I'll start with the quarterbacks. We're gonna start with our starts this week, and I'll sort of go over why I picked this guy, and then we'll go around talking about it, and then we'll go through all the position players. So in terms of starts this week, somebody I think that should be starting in most leagues if you have them, especially unless you have like Aaron Rodgers somehow or any luck, is Matt Ryan. I think this week Matt Ryan is someone you need to start. You know, last week he threw for 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and basically 300 yards against Philly. You know, he's facing New York this week, the Giants, who gave up, you know, 356 yards and 3 touchdowns to Romo in week 1. They gave, you know, an 80-yard drive in 40 seconds. So I see him really, especially with Julio Jones, who destroyed Byron Maxwell. And the Giants don't have anything that can stack up to Byron Maxwell. I'm not saying that he's good, but there's just nobody who's going to be able to cover him. And then Roddy White's healthy as well. And he actually had a decent week. And then Tevin Coleman, of course, who's, you know, coming around, filled in for Devontae Freeman and looked good. So I just think that all the, you know, these weapons, despite, you know, the offensive line being a little shaky, they have Kyle Shanahan as our offensive coordinator, which I think he's one of the better ones in the league. So I just think with this defense and the playmakers he have and that, you know, he's healthy and everybody's healthy, I think Matt Ryan's someone I would start this week at quarterback. To Hall, what about you for your quarterback to start this week?
Well, I had a couple on a post I did earlier today, but I really like Carson Palmer against Chicago this week. I mean, Chicago's defense and secondary as a whole is nothing special to me. I like the Vic Fangio high higher at D coordinator. Fox probably toughens up the D a little bit, but Aaron Rodgers kind of dissected them. But the main part is just the secondary. I do not trust at all, even though they brought in Roll, my boy. He's kind of older, but he's a decent player, but he's older. And then the other reason is just because with Ellington going down, how many carries do they really want to pound Johnson? They're already a team that throws a ton regardless. So I think they might lean on the pass game even more so with him out of there. They'll see if they get the rookie David Johnson going a little bit, but as we saw last week, he's known for being kind of a receiver as well. So it should be even more just throws. I think they'll just add more short throws rather than trying to just run it up the gut with Chris Johnson, who looks just like, pretty worthless. But neither of those guys are grinders or pounders. So I like them to throw it a ton, and I'd be pretty disappointed with anything less than 280 yards and a couple TDs. I would be shocked.
Yeah, that defense in Chicago looks like it's a work in progress, and I really like Palmer. He's got that, he's got John Brown, he's got Larry Fitzgerald. Hopefully Michael Floyd will start getting better soon. You saw David Johnson rip a 55-yard reception for a touchdown, so who knows? But yeah, no, I like him. I think he's someone that's undervalued as a quarterback. If you get him as your backup, I think that's a steal. But I want to ask you, Mario, who's a quarterback that you would want to start this week, and why?
Okay, I'm going to go a little deeper. I kind of like Joe Flacco this week. I know he looked pretty bad this week against Denver, but he's getting Oakland. That defense looked horrible against Cincinnati. They just got chewed up. Their secondary took a big hit. They lost Charles Woodson and their free safety, Nate Allen. So this has the makings of that classic Joe Flacco 304 touchdown game. And Steve Smith, too, I think he's just going to have a huge game. Just to piggyback on that real quick, I don't think they're going to be able to stop anybody on that team. I know they don't have the greatest line, and Flacco looked like he was under a little duress last week, but Oakland doesn't really have much, and I just see them coming back for a revenge game.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, if he throws to Steve Smith a lot, which he did last season, a little bit of Torrey Smith, but he started off hot, and hopefully that can change. If he keeps looking at Forsett, too, who everybody expected to have a spike in receptions with Mark Trestman as their offensive coordinator, hopefully that will improve as well. Unfortunately, their first-round pick, Rashad Perryman, is still out with that sprained knee, so that might be affecting it as well, that vertical threat. But hopefully, he's going up against a weak defense, who actually is that weak defense is somebody that my start running back is going up against. He is facing Cincinnati, and that's Dayton Woodhead. Is my starting running back this week, the guy I want you to start this week. A little bit of a shocker. He had 2 touchdowns last week, 2 rushing touchdowns, goal line touches, along with 42 yards, receiving 4 catches and 20 yards. And that was against Detroit. Detroit has a ferocious front seven, even without Ndamukong Suh. And I'm really shocked that, not only Daniel Woodhead, but Phillip Rivers was able to shred for over 400 yards passing. So maybe that makes, maybe that says something about, Detroit's defense, or it says something about San Diego's offense. But he's facing, Danny Woodhead is facing Cincinnati this week. I see the one positive that Oakland did was they were able to get a lot of points to their running backs last week. Cincinnati gave up 55 yards rushing, 14 receptions, 94 yards receiving, and 2 receiving touchdowns between Marcel Reese and Latavius Murray. And I could just see, a more dynamic offense coming into Cincinnati and overwhelming them a little bit. They're facing injuries. Burfict is out still. And then Paul Dawson's still not living up to his second-round hype. So I could see Danny Woodhead still getting goal line touches and being looked in the pass game and have a chance for a touchdown, hopefully near 100 yards combined if lucky. But the matchup this week and what he did last week, I think he's someone worth starting this week. Mario, we'll go to you first. Who's your running back this week that you want to start?
I like Danny Woodhead myself. That was a great call. But I'm going to go again with Amir Abdullah. Like I said, I just see his work increasing. Going against Minnesota, Carlos Hyde just decimated that team. One of the prettiest touchdown runs I've ever seen in my life when he cut back, but that's another story. Like I said, I just think, and he's returning punts, just his volume's going to have to go up. I mean, he's just too explosive to keep down. The fact that he catches the ball, it's just a stud in the making right there. So I really like Amir Abdullah this week.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I just really think his stock is going way up. And, you know, if he didn't grab him, try to grab him while you still can. But probably unlikely if the person who owns him is halfway smart, I guess. To Hall, who's your running back this week? Who's the running back you want to start this week and why?
Well, as usual, there's a bunch of them. You know, I talked about Marshawn Lynch a little bit on my thing today. Obviously, everybody's starting Marshawn Lynch if you have him. That's not rocket science. It's not nothing intelligent there. A guy I really like though is I like Mark Ingram quite a bit this week. Going against Tampa Bay, which just looked just atrocious this last week. I like Ingram to get a couple TDs this week, whether it's short yardage or whatever. I really expect him to kind of get off. I just Tampa just looks like a total disaster, so I kind of think New Orleans will be able to do kind of whatever they want to do, and they're probably going to want to get this guy going. And I like him to get 20 carries at a minimum, and just go to work on this defense, and then hopefully for his sake, Breeze gets him down inside the 5, and he just closes it out. Maybe breaks off a long one for me too. And then Forsett against against Oakland, I wasn't too happy at all with Forsett's last game. I didn't like Forsett as a feature back. I thought he was a little overdrafted. Personally, I don't think he's that talented of a running back. He's always been kind of a backup. I don't know if he's got it in him to make it through another full season, but Oakland is the worst rush D kind of last year. They were improved with Del Rio. They did a decent job on Hill, so I was a little down on him, but like you mentioned, he should catch a lot of balls and should get a bunch of carries, and I expect him to have a solid performance.
Yeah,
so sorry about that, Doug.
Yeah, no, I think that Forsett's going to have a bounce back week. Like I mentioned, with Mark Trustman being there, I think he's going to be even more utilized. Considering Alfonso Teleferio is still out. Buck Allen not really doing that well. And then they released Bernard Pierce over the offseason. So hopefully, he'll start producing, because a lot of people drafted him as low-end running back 1, especially in PPR leagues. So I want to sort of go into the wide receiver, and this is piggybacking off a little bit about, I think it was Mario. You said Carson Palmer, right?
No,
I'm sorry. That was to Hall. So I actually picked Larry Fitzgerald this week as my starting as the wide receiver I want to start this week. He had 8 targets last week. He had the most on the team, 6 receptions for 87 yards against New Orleans. He's facing Chicago, who gave up 3 touchdowns to Green Bay wide receivers last week, including 2 to James Jones. Like I said, he received the most targets. Carson Palmer's back. Michael Floyd is still recovering from that, the fingers that he's, injured over preseason. And, like I said, they gave up 2 touchdowns to James Jones, and they could have given up more, but it was some penalty calls that got taken back. So if James Jones can do that, who got cut by not only Oakland and New York, I can really imagine what Larry Fitzgerald does with Carson Palmer. I could seriously see him getting a touchdown this week and getting 6 or 7 catches, maybe even nearly 100 yards. But, that's just me. To Hall, we'll go with you this time. Wide receiver that you'd want to start this week.
Yeah, I really like all those Arizona guys. John Brown, Fitzgerald, they should all get off. I like your call there, Doug. A guy that got pointed out to me, other than I think I spoke on Terrence Williams a little bit earlier. I like him a great deal this week as far as where he's ranked or what he probably costs on. I don't know what he costs on DFS, but I'm sure he's probably, at least the number's probably a little low on a guy who should get a ton of targets. But I really liked what I saw in a terrible, disgustingly embarrassing performance by the Minnesota Vikings. I was excited to see Mike Wallace kind of seem to be Teddy Bridgewater's kind of favorite guy, and I was even more excited to see him throw that kind of perfect deep ball that the Niners pass interfered on, but they didn't call it. I don't know if you guys are watching. You live on the East Coast. You might have been asleep. I don't know. It might have been like midnight there. Mario's a firefighter. He might have been pulling an all-nighter. I don't know what he was doing. But I was kind of intrigued to see that. And then as we saw with Detroit this last week, just get torched by Phillip Rivers. It was mostly on kind of underneath stuff, which isn't Wallace's specialty per se, even though he's been doing that a lot over the past few years, did some of it in this last game. And so he's a guy, I'm not going to name a guy like that I have as like a top 10 receiver. You got all the usual guys, everybody's starting those guys. But Wallace is a guy I'm kind of high on right now. And Detroit secondary is looking a little bit banged up, and I think they might get caught slipping for a deep ball with Mike Wallace getting the crowd going, Minnesota making up for last week's dud.
Yeah, no, hopefully they do, because that was just embarrassing a little bit on the part of Minnesota.
It was.
Especially considering who they lost to, who I don't understand how the 49ers can do anything. Mario, who's the wide receiver?
Though, you see him there? How can you not look at Tom Sula and not love that guy? I hate it. At first I was like, this guy's a clown. But then he's on the sideline looking like an Italian mobster. He's got the dip in his mouth. He's sweating over there. I'm like, oh, I like this guy, right?
Yeah, no, I thought he was going to order a hoagie for delivery to be brought to the field. I don't know. I thought we'd just see someone run up and give it to him real quick, and he's eating that while he's trying to talk, and making sure he puts grease in his hair and slicks it back. And
what a character!
You
should be that guy for Halloween.
I think I will. I want to be like him when I grow up. Somehow a head coach. Mario, who's the wide receiver that you'd want to start this week?
All right, there's two guys I want to talk about really quick. Just to piggyback off of Joe Flacco, like I was saying, Steve Smith. Like I said, the secondary's really banged up there. I know his end result didn't look that good, but he still had 7 targets. And basically had a touchdown go off his face at the end of the game. So if he catches that, his game looks a little bit better. And Brandon Cooks, he's kind of held down, but he's got Tampa this week. They looked abysmal. I think he's going to blow up this week. You might see a 2-touchdown game out of him.
Oh,
yeah, you definitely could.
I hope so.
Yeah, I can't see how he doesn't go off on that team. Yeah.
If Marcus Mariota and Tennessee can get 4 touchdowns in the first half off that Tampa team, I can only imagine, what Joe Flacco can do. Absolutely. And that's not saying that Joe Flacco is a better in his first NFL regular season game. Kind of very embarrassing. But then I tell people, Tampa picked first in the draft for a reason. I want to go into the tight ends next. Now, usually it's harder to find a tight end to start this week. But considering what we had last week, there's plenty of tight ends that could definitely be someone that you want to look at. And one of them I want to talk about is someone that maybe a month ago or 2 months ago wasn't someone who was going to start, but now he is because of how injured he's always been. That's Jordan Reed. And Jordan Reed's a guy I'd want to start this week. He had 11 targets last week. 11 targets, 7 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown versus Miami. Excuse me. He's facing St. Louis. St. Louis, even though they did beat the Seahawks, they still gave up 6 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown to Jimmy Graham. Not a bad stat line. And I really think that Jordan Reed is going to see more targets and be looked at more this week, especially considering Deshaun Jackson. Injured his hamstring. He's going to be out a few weeks. Who they left with? Andre Roberts, Pierre Garçon. That's it. So I think Jordan Reed's someone who's going to really be looked at. As long as he stays healthy, I think he could seriously put up top 10 numbers. Considering, Kirk Cousins is, I don't know. I think he's a backup quarterback, but somehow starting. And when backup quarterbacks play, they often look at their tight ends as a safety valve. So I think it's going to be like that going forward. So I would take Jordan Reed this week to start. Mario, what about you?
I'm going to go with Austin Seferian-Jenkins. Again, I'm not crazy about Tampa's team, but he could become Jameis Winston's best friend. He had 7 targets this week, We all know he had the 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's going to keep up, but he should have the targets. He ran 18 snaps from the slot, which, he's basically playing receiver. I know Mike Evans wasn't really healthy, so I guess we'll have to see what his distribution will be once Evans gets back to full health. But I think he's clearly part of the plan over there, and like I said, with a rookie quarterback, I think the tight end is his best friend. So I could see him putting up decent numbers every week, especially this coming week against, was he playing? Arizona, I believe. New Orleans, who Arizona just put up decent numbers with their tight end, and he was a journeyman. So I could see him doing another decent game here.
Yeah, I would have to think so too. He was like Eric Ebron, someone who was pegged to sort of have a bounce back, sort of a breakout even sophomore season. So hopefully we see. Obviously, I don't think 2 touchdowns a week is something he's going to keep up.
Right.
But who knows? Especially with Mike Evans. That's the only thing that concerns me is Mike Evans coming back and seeing how much it takes away from ASJ. To Hall, who's the tight end or tight ends that you'd want to start to why?
First off, I like both those guys that you mentioned quite a bit. I've always been a huge Jordan Reed supporter since his rookie year. Obviously, the health issues has been kind of the only thing holding him back. Top 10 talent, obviously, at tight end there. Like you said, I really liking him this week a lot. And ASJ, obviously, he's from my hometown. He's a monster out here. He's a monster everywhere he goes. He's a legend. But I like a guy who's not ranked that high this week, and people are really down on him this year, is Vernon Davis. He had a couple drops this last week, but the explosiveness looked back to me. He looks like his speed is back. He burned a couple dudes deep. So I like, and then we saw what happened to Pittsburgh's defense this last week. Gronk took him for 3 TDs. They don't even, half the time they're not even covering. The defense is in disarray. I'd imagine that's something that they're working on, but I don't know. Sometimes teams just have a weakness, and maybe that's one of their many weaknesses. So I like Vern to catch a bomb.
Yeah, I thought about Vernon
the middle
Davis.
Of that defense.
Yeah, I thought about Vernon Davis a little bit, but I don't know. Obviously, he had his best game since the first week of last season, but I got to see more out of him first. That's what I feel. I think they're going to rely on their run game a lot, considering how Colorado did against a pretty stout Minnesota defense, or at least a young up-and-coming defense. So we'll see. So I guess I want to sort of segue into the guys you want to be keeping on your bench this week. Our sits, and we'll go to the quarterbacks again first. And the guy I'm picking this week actually had a really good week last week, and that's Alex Smith. 22 for 33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Faced Houston, seemed to carve him up. Travis Kelce had 2 touchdowns. I believe Jamal Charles had a receiving touchdown. So he had a really good week, considering he's not really a guy that you think about in fantasy, because he's sort of a game manager, a really high-paid game manager, I should say. But the reason I want to sit him this week is because they're facing Denver. And Denver, like we brought up earlier, just shut down Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco threw for 117 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And, I just don't think that Alex Smith is going to be able to keep up what he did in week 1 against Houston. He's facing a much better secondary, and I literally wrote down not usually this good. So I don't know. Even though he has the weapons, Macklin, Kelce, Charles, I just think that Denver's going to give him a real challenge, and it's going to be a defensive matchup where you could see a not very high scoring game. But I think both teams have a really good defense. So Alex Smith's my guy. I think I lost track here, but we'll go with the Hall first. The Hall, who's a quarterback or quarterbacks that you want to tell people to sit this week?
Yeah, this is a guy I respect about as much as any quarterback in the league. His overall skill set. Cam Newton is all about the hog life. He's a legend in my book. It's not his fault they don't have the weapons around him, and it's really unfortunate. But they're going against the Houston Texans, who are coming off kind of an embarrassing loss there at home against KC. And I'm just concerned. Normally I would always not really mind somebody starting Cam Newton because I think he's going to get it on the ground. But with J.J. Watt And Clowney there setting the edge. I'm sure you all saw the video of him manhandling and setting the edge, manhandling that O tackle and slamming him to the ground with one arm. I don't see him finding as many opportunities to hit the outside and run for the yards he usually does, making him as valuable as he is. And I think they're going to kind of struggle offensively. So I think that'll be kind of a defensive game there. He's just a guy that I normally don't mind starting in almost any circumstance because you never know what he's going to rush for TD-wise or whatever, get that going for him. But, the weapons are just gross, and I just don't see it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think without, if they don't target Greg Olsen, like they only gave him one catch last week, especially considering, they lost Kelvin Benjamin, I think it's going to be hard for Cam Newton to be usually, that top 10, top 12 quarterback that we're used to seeing. So I think it'll be a really down year for him overall. Mario, what about you? Who's a quarterback that you'd want to sit this week? That you tell people, keep on the pine.
Right. I'm sorry, but I have to sit Peyton Manning this week. I know in most leagues it's going to be hard to do that, but if you have a better backup option, I would definitely do it. KC's D at home, Peyton Manning last week threw for 175 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. He just looked like he was shooting ducks out there. He couldn't hit his receivers, and this is going back to last year, so this is a growing concern in my opinion. I don't think he has the arm strength anymore, and coming off a game like that, going to KC, I just don't like him this week. Again, like I said, it's hard to sit him because where he was drafted, and probably your secondary option isn't that good. But if you in a shallower league and you have a decent backup quarterback, I would definitely sit Manning this week.
Yeah, he's someone I'm concerned about a little bit. Just even though he has the weapons, I'm just concerned. Maybe they'll rely on my boy C.J. Anderson more this week.
He's hurt too. You got to
watch.
He's banged up too.
Yeah.
If that toe injury is something to be is serious, he's not going to be able to run. But Hillman's not too bad either. So he does have weapons, but
we don't
his
talk
arm,
about Ronnie
his
Hillman.
arm does not look like what it was. So.
No, we don't talk about Ronnie Hillman. No. C.J. Anderson is God. I want to go into the running backs now. And this is a guy that I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me about because he's just so explosive, and we saw that last week, and he's a fantasy darling because he broke out finally at the end of last season. That's Latavius Murray. He had a really good week last week. He had 44 yards on the ground on 11 attempts, and even 4 yards per carry. Then he had 7 catches for 36 yards against Cincinnati. Like I said earlier, they gave up a lot of receptions to running backs. But he's facing Baltimore. He's facing Baltimore this week, and we seem to be talking a lot about this Baltimore-Oakland matchup, and that's just how it goes. But Baltimore only gave up, 70 yards on the ground on 24 attempts. And that doesn't exactly come up to a good yards per carry number. And they only gave up 4 catches for 19 yards to running backs as well. It's surprising because Oakland got destroyed last week by Cincinnati, and they still relied on Murray. It could cause them to abandon the run, though, especially if Derek Carr does play this week and doesn't get injured, where they have Matt McGloin in there, where he can't be trusted. But I actually wrote down your Carr will be back as well. He has a slight thumb injury, and they could be relying more on their pass game. Who knows? Because I don't think Baltimore is going to lose to Oakland. Although we did see Seattle lose to St. Louis, so anything can happen. But Murray is the guy this week I'd want to sit. Mario, we'll go with you. Who's a running back that you'd want to sit this week and why?
Okay, for me it's definitely Alfred Morris. Going against the St. Louis Rams. That D line is ridiculous. You got Aaron Donald and Robert Quinn, who had 2 sacks each. They had 6 sacks in total. Sorry, T-Hole, but they held Lynch in check. He only had 73 yards rushing, but luckily he catches the ball a little bit. He had his 5 receptions, and Morris does no such thing. He had 0 catches this week. He don't catch the ball. So as far as value in PPR leagues or standard, I think he has nothing. I don't think he's going to do anything this week.
Yeah, that offensive line is something that to be concerned about, and I just think that offense is really going to be something that you don't want to be near, except for Jordan Reed. But Hall, what about you? Who's a running back that you tell people to sit this week?
A guy I'm really not feeling, a team I'm really not feeling. Indianapolis Colts. Frank Gore going against the Jets, one of the better defenses in my opinion in the whole NFL, and definitely run defenses. Even though Sheldon Richardson, one of the best in the game, is still suspended, but even without him, I don't see Gore having a great game. I mean, it seems like I think I've heard stuff about them wanting to keep him on kind of a pitch count early, not get him like too many carries, but they have their backup is a bum and nobody like out of nowhere, and then I don't know what they're going to have to throw the ball to win the game. If Cromartie's out, which I'm pretty positive he is, that'll give them an opportunity to kind of at least try to attack the secondary a little bit more. So I just don't see Gore doing much of averaging more than 2.5 yards a carry unless he lucks out and gets like a PI at the 1 or somebody goes down at the 1, maybe he punches it in from the 1 or something. But I wasn't a huge fan of that signing. I didn't really mind it, but I thought they should have something else in the can when making a move like that. So I'm not liking him against the Jets.
He's really going to be limited, at least to start the season, so they can keep him fresh down the line. That's going to, certainly hurt his fantasy value. Going back to the Kansas City game, the Kansas City versus Denver game, which is tomorrow, the guy I'd want to sit this week is Jeremy Maclin, that wide receiver. He had 9 targets last week, 5 catches, 52 yards against Houston. But he's facing Denver that only gave up 6 catches and 45 yards to Baltimore wide receivers last week. And I really am concerned about who he's going to face at cornerback because they got Chris Harris or Akeem Talib, who are both, borderline shutdown corners. Much tougher matchup. And he's also, I know this really won't affect him that much, he also has a small back injury that limited him on Monday, but he seems to be fine. He'll be ready to go. So all those things combined, I just don't like him this week. To Hall, what about you? Who's the wide receiver that you probably would tell people to sit this week?
Well, I talked about it a little bit today earlier, but I'm not big on Amari Cooper this week. A lot of people, are going to start him anyway because he's, Mr. Exciting, Mr. High Pick. Didn't really have a greatest week one, but was decently and highly targeted. But it looks like David Carr might play, so that would be a boost for him. A little more when I'm thinking about McGloin in there. I'm just like, oh my God, it's just going all downhill here for the Raiders. Like, this is just going to be gross. But if my boy, the most underrated corner in football, Jimmy Smith, is locked on Amari Cooper, then just plan on getting like 2 catches for 8 yards type of game out of this guy. Like, Jimmy Smith is a legend at DB, and if they shadow him, which I don't know that they probably don't. They don't do that so much with him. So if Cooper gets over on the right side against some of those guys who aren't respected anywhere near Jimmy Smith, he might be able to get off a little bit. But I'm expecting things to just go all bad for Oakland this week, and he's a guy I wouldn't be too comfortable starting. So if you have a better option or a better matchup, I'd probably lean that way unless you have no other choice.
Mario, what about you?
I know Philadelphia's secondary is suspect, but I'm sitting Terrence Williams this week. I know he's a popular pickup. I don't think he has what it takes to be the guy. I think they'll be able to game plan just to stop him. And if people think, oh, this is the big pickup, I got to put him in. I think if you have better options, I think I would sit him. I just don't see him being able to take over a game. Obviously not like Des Bryant, but I don't see the talent there. I mean, he's a good player, but I don't think he's going to carry that offense, that receiver. So I would sit him this week.
Yeah, no, I don't trust Terrence Williams yet, and I know Hall mentioned him earlier, but I don't trust him just yet. I'd wait a week and see how it goes. Who knows who could step up, whether it's Jason Witten, Cole Beasley even. But no, I definitely agree with you there. And then last but not least, our tight ends this week. We're coming up on 5 minutes left, so we're about almost done here. But let's go over our tight ends real quick. The guy I want to sit this week, Jordan Cameron. Jordan Cameron, he had 7 targets last week, 4 catches, 73 yards against Washington, which was a closer game than I feel comfortable with. They're facing Jacksonville, though, and it, like I mentioned earlier, held Greg Olsen to 1 catch for 11 yards. And Greg Olsen, I think, is a top 5 tight end in fantasy, and it's really shocking to see that considering just who's actually even there to throw to in Carolina. But you're also going to see better linebackers there in Jacksonville than in Washington. And, you're going to see maybe Tannehill throw to his wide receivers more, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker getting more into the game, Kenny Stills. But Jordan Cameron's a guy I want to sit this week. Mario, quick, what about what tight end would you want to sit this week?
Going back to that Philadelphia-Dallas game, I'm sitting Jason Witten. Last year, 2 games against Philly, 8 receptions on 11 targets, 77 yards, no touchdowns. The Eagles just the death of tight ends. Last year, they were 3rd best against them and only allowed 1 touchdown. And addition of guys like Kiko Alonso should only help that matter. So if you have a better option, I would sit Jason Witten.
Yeah, no.
Nice info. Kudos on the info. Dug deep on that one. I like that. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's some deep info. To Hall, what about you? Who's the tight end you'd want to tell people that this week?
A guy who I've been talked into, and I thought he would be okay, and he still probably will be okay, but I'm just really disappointed that Owen Daniels only had 2 catches for 5 yards. Mm-hmm. I'm scared to start him again this week on a short week. I'm assuming he'll be better than 2 for 5. Let's be real. But the guy's always been a top 10 tight end when healthy kind of thing as far as production, though that hasn't been very often over the past 5 years. But everyone thought he'd come into Denver, kind of take over Julius Thomas's role and get a bunch of TDs and all that, but it looks like Denver's going to struggle to throw the ball a little bit more than we were expecting, and we were also told they were going to run a lot more. That didn't seem to work out very well last week, but I think it'll work a little better this week. And he's 35 years old. He's and I just like their throwing targets need to go at KC's defensive backs. So Sean Smith, one of their number 1 corner, who's suspended for a few games. Marcus Peters, my boy from UW, is a rookie and looked real good week 1. But let's be real, is he going to be able to cover Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders? That's where I would be throwing if I was Peyton Manning, and let them kind of do their work. So I'd just be kind of scared to start Owen Daniels. Not to say he's going to be non-existent like he was last week, but I'm kind of down on him after 1 week, which I normally don't do. But I was pretty disappointed with that.
Yeah, no, you would think he would have come in, sort of taken over that role, and maybe not had the same kind of production that Julius Thomas had, but something close to it. But I just think that passing game is going to suffer outside of Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, even a little bit of C.J. Anderson, because I love me some C.J. Anderson. So hopefully,
still high on him with the foot injury there, or what's your take on what's going on with that?
It's a toe injury, and I will forever love him. So don't talk bad about C.J. Anderson.
I'm not. I'm just curious.
You just got to watch it. That's turf toe. That's going to be ugly. It's not going to.
Yeah,
he's going to be able to play through that.
Better get Monte Ball on the phone.
He's a superhero, guys. Come on.
There you go.
So that's going to do it for us here. This is our first show. Our start and sits for this week. Week 2. I'm glad to have had Tahal here. You can follow Tahal on Twitter at Bedict, BEDDICT, 143 on Twitter. Be sure to just don't do it when he's watching baseball because he gets very desperate. And then follow Mario. Mario deserves to be followed more. He's on Twitter at Mario_ROTO 108. Is that right, Mario?
That's right. That's correct.
So make sure to follow him. Follow me, of course, at DMooreNFL, DMOORENFL. That'll do it for us here this week. Next week we'll be back starting our regular time, Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to follow that. Follow the NickelPressShow. Have a great night, guys, and good luck on football this week.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.
Peace.
All right. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ending the episode.